Hi there. Welcome to another edition of the Processing Blue podcast. I am Panthers beat reporter Mike Kaye. I am joined by fellow Panthers beat reporter Alex Zietlow. We've got a really jam-packed edition of the Processing Blue podcast for you this week. Chris Franklin, my former beat partner from NJ.com, who kind of covers basically every NFL team in New Jersey or around it. There are basically three in the tri-state area. Will join us later on in the program to talk Eagles-Panthers. That's a joyous football conversation for the sickos. But before we get into that, Alex, as my current beat partner, how are you?
Fantastic, bro. We're both rocking hats today. I got the Charlotte Observer hat, you know what I'm saying. But no, I'm doing great.
I do know what you're saying.
I sat in on the conversation with you and Chris, and it's really good. It's really good football stuff, and hopefully we can talk some football stuff here for the next 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, and for those who can't see on the video, I am all musiced out today. I'm wearing a Foo Fighters sweater. Shouts to Nate Mandel. Also wearing a Sub Pop hat. They're the record label that discovered, quote unquote, Nirvana. They also have Mudhoney and some other bands you've probably heard of.
Wait, Mike, can I say
Anywho,
one thing real quick?
sure.
Okay, so this is just a funny story that you brought up because of Sub Pop. The first training camp practice that I ever covered was last year, right after the Panthers drafted Bryce Young. There's so much excitement, whatever, and we were doing this thing where we were taking videos after every training camp practice, and I'm sitting there taking a video of you, and you're wearing a huge green Sub Pop shirt.
I like their gift shop. I don't, whatever. I
No,
mean, I bought this at the same time as
and
that
you're
shirt.
wearing that. It's so funny to look back on because you're wearing that, dude, and, I am trying to be, professional. I'm trying my best not to laugh because you're talking about serious stuff. You're talking about how Bryce looked in his first practice, blah, blah, blah. You're talking alongside Scott Fowler, all these things, and I am just, trying my best to keep the Sub Pop out of the frame of the camera while also keeping your eyes in the upper
Let
third,
it
because,
breathe, baby.
yeah, and
What I say.
I was laughing so hard. When I look back on that. So every time I think of Sub Pop, and also I didn't know what Sub Pop was. I was like, is that some esoteric fast food joint in the Northeast that I don't know of? This Carolina boy doesn't know of. That's literally what I thought it was, and I was like, we got to get this at the shop.
Well, to add to this, there's a story about this one as well. This hat as well. I don't know if you remember. I wore this hat to practice one day, and Dave Canales was eyeing me. He's like, "That's the Seattle. That's the state of Washington, outline." And so he goes, because I'm from the Seattle area, and I said, "Yes, Dave. I'm very aware. You're from you live there." But he was trying to figure out the hat. I guess he hadn't heard of Sub Pop. He's more of a reggae dance music kind of.
I do admire Dave's humility. He's like, oh yeah, I'm from Seattle. It's like, yeah, dude, we've
Yeah,
written
I mean, we've
15
kind of covered
stories.
that a few times.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of covering Dave, so the Panthers lost another close one, a 26-23 overtime loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which it felt like they should have won outside of four major blunders. One by the referees, in my opinion. Obviously, two missed field goals from Eddie Pinheiro, a would-be touchdown called incomplete, even though had it been called a touchdown on the field, which I think it should have been, it wouldn't have been overturned and it would have been a score, and the Panthers probably win that game. And then obviously a fumble in overtime by Chuba Hubbard. I mean, it was almost like the Observer jinx worked big time in that game between the Pinheiro misses. We've written about him more than anyone. And then obviously the Chuba Hubbard train. There's no bigger ticket holders on the Express than the Observer. We've said from the jump, he's the guy. He's the best player on the offense.
And then on top of that, Mike Kaye wrote a great story about David Moore, the veteran coming in, kind of the unheralded veteran coming in the wide receiving core. And he does a rare thing and drops
he had a
a
brutal
gorgeous pass. Yeah, it was a
that was a
huge
tough
drop, and
beat,
I
man.
like, literally, when he dropped that pass, Mike goes,
DJ
"Dang."
Wadham didn't have a good game, and we've written about it. Like, it was almost everybody that the Observer has written positively about just didn't show. Well, no, that's not true. Jadeveon Clowney got himself a sack. He is now the sack leader of the Panthers at 3.5. Pray for his soul.
Pray for him. Pray.
The bit, Alex, the bill. So, there's a lot to take away from that game. I thought, we'll get into this. Obviously, the conversation's going to be about Bryce Young. I'm ready to say if Bryce Young plays like he has the last 2 games during the last 5 games, not only should he be the starter in 2025, they shouldn't even look at quarterbacks in the draft. Like, I wouldn't even draft a guy in the 5th round. Not to say that he would be the franchise starter for the next several years, but I have seen enough that if you want to bring in a veteran to push him, cool, but he should be the guy in the lead heading into the offseason. And I think teammates are really buying into him based on my conversations both on the record and off the record. Like, I feel like there is a very growing sense of, okay, that's the guy they drafted. Alex, let's talk a little bit about Bryce, and then we'll get into our overall takeaways from this game.
Okay, sounds good. I mean, well, I want to start on Bryce. If we're going to talk the biggest positives and the biggest negatives of the Panthers-Bucks game, the biggest positive is Bryce Young. Bryce was in control. He's in a zone right now. I looked up some PFF grades right before this while you were talking with Chris, and I want to share a couple of them with you. 79.2 grade as a passer, and they have stats for everything, so I'm going to toss out some weird ones. He threw 4 what PFF calls big-time throws, which is essentially a pass with excellent ball location and timing and generally thrown further down the field or in a tighter window. 4 is the most he's had all season. His average depth of target was 10.4 yards, which is most since coming back from his benching, and that's fresh off.
That's incredibly significant in my opinion,
Yep.
by the way, not to cut you
No,
off.
100%, and it's fresh off of the best performance that he had against the Chiefs post-benching, which was at 10.1 yards average depth of passing. So, and previous to that, we were, deep in the single digits. So that's a big deal when we're talking about, his confidence throwing the ball down the field. On top of all that, the Panthers experienced more pressures than any other time this season. The defense allowed 22 quarterback pressures this game. And this is with Bryce throwing deeper, and this is with Bryce throwing more accurately. And when you think about these stats, they come to life when you try to find some examples of it in the game. You remember that first quarter throw that he threw to Tommy Tremble with him, the ball's at the 15-yard line or something, and he has to maneuver all the way to the 7-yard line and then just chuck it across his body to a wide open Tommy Tremble, but he wasn't open until the ball was in the air. There's
Right.
stuff like that. There's throwing the ball to David Moore with maybe 2 or 3 seconds of real anticipation. He has to throw all the way from one hash mark to the other sideline, and David Moore still hasn't made his cut back out to the sideline. Throws a dot right to his hands, and Moore drops it. But that's a big deal. One final stat, or one final thing I want to talk about. That was his passing. Bryce's running ability has been on display as well, and it was particularly on display against the Bucks. On the season, he has 21 designed runs. Of those 21 designed runs, he's ran for -5 yards. That's terrible. That's awful. I don't even know how you come up with that number. However, in the 18 scrambles he's had, he's run for 113 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's 6.2 yards per scramble, and one of those touchdowns was this past weekend. And then, of course, on that touchdown, he does what I think is the John Wall dance, which I was talking about on Twitter, and apparently it's just some dance that kids do nowadays. I don't know. I really thought he was showing out for North Carolina.
Alex just said kids nowadays.
Well, you know what I'm saying. I'm I'm getting up there in age. My birthday's coming up. But I mean, when you just take everything that this guy has done in the past 2 days, Panthers fans, don't be afraid to trust your eyes when you're thinking that Bryce is playing better. Don't fear. And if you want to fear, because a good dose of fright, I guess, is like a good thing, the stats back you up, and Alex Zietlow backs you up. And I was among the more skeptical people of his return come post benching. And like the stats are not lying. My eyes are not lying. Mike, what are your eyes telling you? Because I don't see how it could be any other way.
Well, Mr. A to Z, you're all about the wordplay. And what I would say is Bryce Young is playing like all of his luggage is Louis B. He is out there balling.
Mike, that's literally an
No,
inside joke that you and me only get. But
I've done 2 inside jokes in 1 sentence. It was great. Bryce Young, to me, looks like the guy that I thought they were going to get. I mean, he's making off-platform throws. I talked to Tommy Tremble after the game. He said he didn't even really look up, and the ball was like right about to go into his gloves. I thought that was one of the most impressive plays he's made. It was also a play that he kind of made regularly at Alabama. Remember, we call him Bama Bryce on this program when he makes some big unscripted throws. It was a scramble drill. Tremble saw him floating to the right, and so he went for a go route on the scramble. That was his instinct. And Bryce just made an incredible anticipation throw. He has made some throws on the run in the last 2 weeks that make you say, what the heck did this previous staff do to him? And why did it linger on until the first 2 games of this season? Like, I don't know, man. Like, last year needs to be like a case study in everything you're not supposed to do with a rookie quarterback. But what I would say is, I mean, his imagination's flowing, and so are his skills. I think a positive to the biggest positive I took away is they might have a nickel defender for the future who's on a cheap rookie contract. I heard about Shaw Smith-Wade. The interception that he had actually was not supposed to be a play that he was able to make. He actually came off his zone area after noticing Baker Mayfield kind of, forcing the ball to Kaye, got the pick. Everybody was stoked for him. He's a guy who's really well liked in the locker room. He's got great study habits. And I think the team is really starting to see this rookie class like blossom. I mean, JT Sanders has more receiving yards than any Panthers tight end since 2019. Xavier Legette leads them in receiving yards and touchdowns. And Jonathan Brooks had some really nice moments as a ball carrier and a receiver against the Bucs. Trevin Wallace got his first sack in overtime. It probably should have been a game-sealing moment for the defense, and instead, obviously, the Chuba Hubbard fumble. I would say the negative, and it's the negative every week, is the run defense. This run defense doesn't, and I brought this up with Chris, you'll hear it later, they don't lose because they're soft. They lose because they are not technique sound. It feels like everybody is like pressing up front. Shy Tuttle just hasn't worked out as the nose tackle. He's taking on double teams, but it doesn't feel like he affects the run at all. I don't know, man. Josie Jewell's got some like very pretty stats. He's had some really rough moments against the run too. The safety group, obviously, the last line of defense has struggled a little bit. But if you run the ball or use the quick passing game, i.e. the screen game, against this team, you will pick up yardage in droves. And they are about to play the best rusher in the entire NFL, who is on pace to break the single season record for rushing yards that's been held for a bajillion years. That's a problem. What's the biggest negative for you, Alex?
I mean, there isn't really a huge negative outside of the run defense. I can't really add too much onto it. Saquon Barkley is gonna have. He's had a remarkable season. He's gonna have his best game yet, barring a catastrophe that.
I mean, barring a blowout where they just pull him at halftime after he's run for like probably
Right.
180 yards at that
Right,
point.
barring a blowout where Sirianni goes to him and goes to him on the bench and says, "Hey man, like you can run for 400 yards this game," and Saquon just goes, No, let the young guys eat or whatever. I'm trying to make a reference to that
Ooh, a
clip.
throwback
I'm trying to
reference.
make
Nice.
a
That's
reference
cool.
to that video, but like I'm
Where
just
yeah,
si-
where he was like rushing for like against the Giants and basically could have gotten 300 yards if he wanted to.
yeah, but I'm just imagining Sirianni like sitting him down and be like, Saquon, you can run for 600 yards.
And like Will Shipley gonna get his time. Even Will Shipley could run for 50 yards against this team, and he has not had the best running start to begin the season.
And I mean, we joke about this. It really can't be overstated that Derek Brown is sincerely the best run stopper in the NFL, probably, and he hasn't been in this system all season. Yeah, I mean, you got Shaq Thompson. You got all these injuries. We've talked about it ad nauseum, so I don't think that we always have to bring it up. But like, this is a big deal. I think that's important when we're kind of considering the next segment of where are we at with Ejiro Evero, the defensive coordinator. Um, Mike, personally, I'm still good with him. I don't know. I don't know a better fit who would a better defensive coordinator who'd want to come to Carolina and who it's and EJ has proven that he can have success here when he has proper talent. Last year, his thing was being a really good pass defense, even with cornerbacks who aren't amazing, even with J.C. Horn, the top cornerback, being gone for the year, or for most of the year. I don't see like literally this is interesting. It was brought up to me pregame. Like I went on another show pregame, uh, prior to the game yesterday or on Sunday, excuse me, and they were bringing me up. They're like, "Yo, is EJ gonna stay? Like, what do you think? Should the Panthers let him go? Whatever." And I'm just like, wait, hold on. When you frame this question, is EJ gonna stay? I thought you were talking about is he gonna have opportunities for other head coaching jobs? Because he's been in the mix for other head coaching positions. Like my brain is not even thinking about a demotion or a firing. Like that's not even in my brain. It's not even in my galaxy. You know what I'm saying? Is there anything else we need to say about that, Mike? Like, what's your temperature check on EJ?
Well, I get asked about it in the mailbag almost every week, and I address it in Wednesday's mailbag. It's out now, obviously, when this goes out as well. Um, the defense has been putrid. Like, I don't, there's no way around it. I understand fans clamoring for change, but I think there is like a sense of, like, if he had NFL level talent at all or most of the 11 starting positions, this would not be a problem. Like, he's proven that he is a very good defensive mind, a very good coach. There's a question of whether he can develop guys or not, and I think that's valid. I think but you're seeing Shaw Smith Wade play well. You're seeing Trevin Wallace play well. So that goes against that. Look, they moved on from Brian Burns. Frankie Louvu left. Shaq Thompson, as you mentioned, got injured. Derek Brown has been a catastrophic loss. Like, yes, they brought in a bunch of his familiars, but most of those guys got injured outside of Ashawn Robinson. There's just been a lot of adversity to overcome. Granted, they are professionals. They should know how to tackle. You don't have to be talented to tackle properly. But one thing I've noticed is players are very quick to point at other teammates or themselves messing up as opposed to the scheme. I know that Panthers fans have kind of a thing against the 3-4 defense and its ability to play the run. Yeah, that's typical that teams that are 3-4 defenses struggle against the run. And again, the Eagles are playing pretty well and they're a hybrid front. So I do think there are people that are going to be enticed by Robert Saleh being on the open market. He obviously has a relationship with Dave Canales. I think that Saleh probably ends up elsewhere, but I do think, Evero is going to have a tough time getting a head coaching job with these numbers. Then again, Dave Canales didn't have great offensive numbers when he got hired here. So who knows? It only takes one. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think I'm not saying you give him a mulligan. I think he would have a very short landing zone next year if you brought him back. But I still think he is a really sharp defensive mind. The staff loves him. The front office loves him. I think if he had some talent, which I expect the Panthers to go very defensive heavy in free agency, I think that will help things. There were a lot of bridge the gap tower players brought in here. And I think having a healthy Derek Brown, having, maybe an upgraded number 2 corner, upgrades in the front seven, I think that would help him tremendously because he is very talented. There's a reason why he's been on the radar for everybody who's basically had a head coaching opening for the past 30 years. So that's kind of where we're at. But I spoke with my former beat writing partner, Chris Franklin, who basically covers the entire Northeast of the NFL at this point from NJ.com. And we chatted a little bit about what to expect from this Panthers Eagles matchup. So I am joined by NJ.com Do Everything football reporter, Chris Franklin, who covers the Eagles and the Giants. He also hosts the No Huddle Show podcast and the Talk is Cheap podcast, because in New Jersey, when you cover football, you cover 3 teams. That's the reality of the situation. But most importantly, as I'm introing Chris, one of my best friends, not just in the business, but in life, he's also my former beat partner with the Eagles. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming matchup between the Panthers and the Eagles in Week 13. So, Chris, first off, the number 1 rusher in the league, who is on pace to potentially break the NFL record for rushing, is going up against the worst rushing defense I have ever covered. And, coincidentally, they're the worst rushing defense team in the league. Where are you at with Saquon Barkley, having watched in these last 12 or so games, and how bad of a matchup is this for the Carolina Panthers?
When the Eagles initially signed Saquon Barkley, I didn't think that I thought he was going to be good and be an upgrade over what they had in DeAndre Swift and Miles Sanders previously, but I didn't think he was going to be this good. I mean, the fact that we're talking Eric Dickerson level here with his rushing is crazy to think about it. You add him behind that offensive line, which is already one of the better ones in the league. And when you have Saquon Barkley's ability to be patient, to wait for those holes and running lanes to open up, this is a recipe for success. I mean, when you look at when DeAndre Swift, when they had him last year, the biggest thing was when he had the yards after contact. When he got hit, he was down. Pretty much, he got hit, okay, he's down, okay, you know where the ball was going to go. Now you have Saquon Barkley's ability. I know we hear Quadzilla and all that stuff about his favorite moniker. Well, you hear Quadzilla and the way he's able to go ahead and get those explosive runs over and over, it wears down. So when I look at him against this Panthers defense, I think he can easily, I think he can get 120 against them. It's a matter of if they get up early, they're going to pull them early because they have those long stretch. They added bye week only long ago, then they'll save them. But 120 is not out the realm of possibility, at least.
I think he's going to get 120 by halftime. To be honest with you, I mean, if you watch this run defense, see, that's the thing that's interesting about the Panthers. Like, in Philly and Jersey, we would call it soft, but I don't think the Panthers defense is soft. I just think they're just like technique adverse. Like teams beat them in the running game, not because they're afraid of contact. It's because they can't wrap up properly. And I think when you go up against a Jeff Stoutland offensive line, that's a recipe for disaster because, you look at Lane Johnson, you look at Mekhi Becton, who's been phenomenal at right guard. You look at Cam Jurgens, who has replaced Jason Kelce, like Jason Kelce's still on the field. I'm just curious what you think with that offensive line getting to the second level the way they do. How difficult has that been for opposing front sevens?
It's been very difficult, and to the point where normally you think through the whole, like something like this is where that zone scheme they run comes into play. It's worked perfectly with them because you have those athletic guys that can get to that dimensional wall off. So now not only do you have the primary running lane, and do I mention, and I know you love this, they actually used a pullback and Ben Van Sumeren before he got hurt. And they use Grant Calcaterra sometimes, and they may use Tyler. Who knows? They've been rotating these guys there. You look at it, and it's like they just do a good job walling you off. Not only do you need the primary running lane, they give them cutback options as well, too, because you got the backside hustling, doing their job to do that as well, too. And I see that. And then you follow the Panthers a lot more than I do. I look at them a couple of times. I see like the gap discipline as well too. Not only just tackling, some of their gap discipline issues, and then some of the over pursue. You can't do that against Saquon Barkley. The moment you try to go this way, they'll just pass you off somewhere else. Next thing you know, there's like the Red Sea parted, and he's running for like 20, 30 yards, and before somebody touches him. So, yeah, I mean, that combination has been deadly for them. And the fact that Stout was also the run game coordinator, it kind of helps them as well too.
The Panthers have been banged up at tight end, but so have the Eagles. I mean, Dallas Goedert, the story of his career has been like potential, but almost always injured. And I think there was a report recently that he's going to be sidelined for a while with a knee injury. Grant Calcaterra, the former SMU tight end, will be probably the primary option at tight end. I know the Eagles are throwing less than any team in the league, but is Grant Calcaterra worth being concerned about, considering the Panthers can't stop crossing routes against tight ends? They did a really good job against Cade Otton, but I think that was more of a function of Baker Mayfield being injured in the second half and them focusing on the screen game. Where do you think Grant Calcaterra can make an impact in this game?
Well, you hit it right on the head with Goddard. Because I feel like it's watching that like a 90s rom-com at the end where it's like, wow, there's a best thing, but hope for more. And then you wait for the more. Can't find it. But with Calcaterra, he's already familiar with Hurts from the time when they were in Oklahoma. So he's not it's like he's working to a completely different guy that he doesn't know. And then you look at the way when he stepped in earlier this season when Goddard had that hamstring injury. And he's become a trusted target when he's on the field. The point where you're like, you know what? Do you move on from Goddard after the season? Because Calcaterra is a competent tight end to be able to start in there. Maybe you get draft a guy, he's your bridge to whoever you draft. You look at the way he does, the one knock against him was always his block. That was it. Because you knew he's a route runner. He's really could be an HVAC if he had a system that was for that. And now that he's fixed it, he's not the best blocker in the world. He's not going to be like, wow, you could teach tape. Wow, this guy is really good at sealing it. But he's done enough now where it gets him on the field, where he's adequate enough working those combination blocks with Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata on the outside edges, where you're like, you know what? He's a decent tight end. And you look to it, I think this offense is still going to run through A.J. Brown. Devontae Smith's coming off the hamstring. I think he comes back this week. They're still going to try to get him his targets. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw maybe 3 targets, one probably like a dig or what have you, or the hook to curl area, something like that, where he's enough where he can get you a first down here or there, and then they'll go back, reverse back to the run game, run the play action off of that. That's where I think, if you're looking from a Panthers perspective, watching Grant Calcaterra in that play action pass and getting up there, say, running like in a post or something like the intermediate part of the passing game, that's where I think he could be effective for a couple first downs.
You brought up Devontae Smith. I know he's been sidelined for a couple of games. A.J. Brown, I think they're undefeated when A.J. Brown plays. I mean, how has Saquon Barkley being in the lineup affected the way that A.J. Brown is used and the way defenses are playing him?
I think the best way that he was used, I wish they used it more against the Ravens when the Ravens played them, was the RPO. Because you have to sell out, because it puts you in a tough position. You want to keep those safeties back because you don't want to give up the big play and the explosive play. But then you want to help out with the run game. So when you keep those safeties back and you try to keep the route safety go six man front and in front, you fill that place. He can just do as he pleases in the middle of the field. And I look at the way that he's in himself. I wish they used it more in terms of that. And I look at the way that he's playing there. AJ, he's another guy. We might see 100 in there. I mean, look at his career. He has its potential to set an NFL record because I think he's the 7th person to have 500, 800, 700, something like that, at least his first 5 seasons, and get 5 touchdowns as well, too. I think he does in this game. He's that good, he's that good a receiver. I think he continues to go and move the ball down the field. And to me, it's almost criminal in a way that he should have way more receiving yards. I know he got injured earlier in the season. He should be up there, in my opinion, with Jamar Chase the way this offense is. And Barkley's presence on that field and drawing that and worry about that play action pass, it just opens up so much for him, man.
We've gone 9 minutes without talking about Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is a rushing touchdown machine, not in the way that Cam Newton was. Obviously, the tush push is a big topic of contention in Carolina because everybody's like, well, Cam Newton would rush for 10 yards to get a touchdown, blah, 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 blah. But what Jalen Hurts seems to be doing is, after an early stretch where he was turning over the ball and making mistakes, I mean, right now he has 5 interceptions on the season. This run that they've had, I want to say it's 9 straight wins, right? Like, they are protecting the ball, and he is getting the ball in the end zone. He has more rushing touchdowns than Saquon Barkley. I'm just curious, how much is that Saquon Barkley effect impacted Jalen Hurts from a passing perspective, but also from a rushing perspective?
Well, one thing we really haven't seen in previous years with Jalen Hurts is that ability to throw the check down. It was always go for the deep ball. Okay, if I don't see it, look 1, 2, okay, he runs around and it does what he has to. He's actually trusted him. We saw, I kid you not, when we saw the screen pass in that press box, we all just stopped and looked and said, like, they actually ran a running back screen and it worked? What's going on here is one of those things there. I think in that terms, you see him is that part of passing game. In the run game, they don't, and I'm shocked they're not, another thing I'm not shocked they're doing more, but they've run it a few times, is that zone read. Because now all of a sudden, you got to worry about Saquon Barkley. If you're the edge rusher, good luck trying to decide what you do. Do you want to help out and try to crash down and stop Saquon Barkley? Okay, I can't do that. Well, if you do that, all of a sudden Jalen Hurts is pulling that ball. He's running around the outside. Here's a first down. So you pick up 7, 8, 9 yards, especially if it's whatever it's short yard situations. And then if he's a +1. So now since you have to worry about Hurts running the outside, all of a sudden that lane on the inside, if you run off tackle with that zone read, that's open. So it's like, what do you do? You sort of feel bad because it's like, what do you do as a defender? Like, I don't know what you throw your hands up in the air. Like, do you blitz? Okay, well, you blitz, then you just throw on top of them because he's able to blitz better. Good luck in terms of that.
Well, you're painting a miserable picture for Panthers fans. Oh, wait, now we have to talk about the defense that's been incredible basically since like week 3. What stands out to you about that unit? Why are they playing so well? And I'll have one more question after this regarding the defense, but what stands out to you about that front 7, about that safety unit? Obviously, they've got 2 awesome rookies in the secondary. Give me a big picture look at this starting 11 and then the rotation.
Definitely. For the first time in a while, they actually have a second level in defense and linebackers. You look at Zach Bond and Kobe Dean, the way they play. Zach Bond is arguably playing at an all-pro level. The way that he's able, and the fact that they initially signed him to be an edge rusher, and all of a sudden he's a middle linebacker off the ball guy. He's playing as well as him. You got to credit the second person reason why they're doing so well, Vic Fangio. You got a veteran coach who knows how to manipulate that front and also with the secondary to back up to try to confuse the quarterbacks. It's almost like that. Remember a couple of years ago, everybody's talking about the blue dresses, the blue is the gold, what have you. He's doing that to the quarterbacks because you think like, oh, this is cover 2. Wait, it's cover 3. Wait, there's a man there, and that's just enough that you have all of a sudden Jalen Carter, who's one of the top 3 defensive tackles in the league now. He's coming down barreling that thing, so you can't even look at the coverage anymore. You got to roll around. Then all of a sudden, Nolan Smith, who was borderline in the bust discussion as a first-round pick, he's starting to pick it up and getting pressure off the edge. Josh Sweat's starting to rising up. He's in a contract year, so he's doing very well. You can't do it. And then you look at the rookies, Cooper DeJean, and it's like arguably the slot is one of the toughest positions to pick up, especially as a rookie. So much stuff going on. He's playing like there's nothing there. And he's doing well against the run, but saw the hit he had of Derrick Henry. And Quinyon Mitchell has allowed 1 touchdown this whole entire season. Going against it seems like everybody wants to target him because he's the rookie with the team using their top receivers, and he's starting down. And it's like, this is a Philadelphia defense that's number 1 in the league. Philadelphia has a number 1 defense. Wait, I feel like it's in the early 90s. Something's not going right here, but here we are, and they're just playing extremely well right now.
Yeah, and that touchdown, I believe, to Quinyon Mitchell was like in garbage time, right?
Garbage time, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a floating pass that he just misplayed. You brought up Josh Sweat. There's also the guy I like to call Milty Shake, Milton Williams, who is killing it as a rotational pass rusher. The 2 of them just seem like earmarked guys on the shopping list for Dan Morgan in the offseason. It seems like Howie's going to have to choose between one of the 2, right? Especially with Jalen Carter playing the way he is. Nolan Smith, you want to give him time. They paid Bryce Huff. Which of those two guys do you think hits the open market, or are they looking at like a potential franchise tag and getting ahead of this sort of thing?
I wonder. I don't know how he's going to use it. He's been adverse.
Right.
He really hasn't liked to use it, so I don't know if they'll use it. Well, so not only
He doesn't like to get behind in negotiations, and that's what the franchise tag does.
Oh yeah. He's I would be surprised if he's talking to Milton right now. If anything, I think Milton would be the guy because Vic tried to target him last year when he was the Miami Dolphins. He knows how important he is, that versatility or running not only as a inside rusher and defensive tackle, but you can bump him out occasionally on the edge. And now you also look at Sweat. I think he's the one that is the outside. I think he hits the open market. And it stinks because I just think overall it's a little streaky. Like he's in one right now, he's in one of his streaks where he gets so much pressure. You're like, what's the stars? The question, then you gotta bring him back. And then you go sometimes where you're like, oh, okay, you see that too. So I think he might be the one that hits the open market. But I can see both of them hitting it and see I'm signing elsewhere too. You know, yeah, you gotta sign Zach Bourne because he's a free agent as well too. He's on a one-way deal.
So he would seem like if they actually did have a franchise tag guy, he would be the guy, right?
He would be the guy. And I just don't. I think Sweat's the one that hits the open market, but I think Williams is the one that something tells me that is. In my mind, I'm like, it's his rappers, but yeah, my mind's telling me is as Josh Sweat, but I just feel like Milton Williams somebody's gonna pay him. In the words of Phillies owner John Milton, somebody's gonna pay him stupid money and throw it at him because he's getting that much pass rush. Leads the league in pass rush efficiency as well too. So it's crazy. They're one defensive tackles.
Yeah, I mean, it turns out passing on Akeem McNeil turned out to be okay for Howard Roseman, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, Chris, thank you for joining me. I can't wait to see you this weekend. It was nice to get the No Huddle crew back in action on the Processing Blue podcast. Chris, have a great week covering the Eagles, and I'll see you this weekend.
I'll see you this weekend, man. Thank you very much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thanks, as always, for listening to our pontifications on all things Panthers with Mike Kaye and myself and our wonderful producer, Zach Dennis. Please subscribe and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts by searching Processing Blue. And if you watch us on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever new episodes drop. And finally, please be sure to stick to charlotteobserver.com for all your Panthers needs. Stay humble, stay creative, and keep processing.
That's a wrap, Zachary.